Well, thanks for joining us for another conversation, ROKK Rundown. You guys, it's been a busy week. There's been a lot of news. There's been a lot of themes that we haven't really focused in on. Much of the conversation in Washington still about the shutdown, still about what's happening at the White House, still a lot of other conversations. But we talked before we got on camera about some things that you're paying close attention to. Rodell, why don't we start with you? You had a pull away that you think might have implications about what might be addressed when we get back into town, when Congress comes back and is in session.
Sure. So just breaking news today about the FBI arresting two former NBA players implicated in a larger gambling scheme. I think this is important. I think that the news is still coming out of what exactly happened. I would say a few things. One is that I don't want to say this was bound to happen, but I think in some ways this was bound to happen. There's a lot of money in sports gambling, and it'll be curious to see how both the NBA, but also the government, how Congress, when they do get back, how they decide to address this, because I don't think that they can turn a blind eye to it. They talk about the integrity of our sports. Today it's the NBA, it could be football, so on and so forth. So I think that at some point in time there will be need to hearings, at least, if not other some sort of legislative action.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how the White House and the Congress react to. So that's breaking today. Big story today, and potentially could have impacts. Ron, you were looking more at the calendar as it relates to the shutdown and what you think might be the forces at nature.
I am, but I just want to keep on the NBA for a minute, because I saw an interview with Michael Jordan recently in the last 24 hours where he said literally that he had not taken a shot, a free throw shot, in like a decade. He had not shot a basketball in like a decade until he was at the Ryder Cup, and he was renting a house from this older gentleman who brought his grandkids in and family in to take photos of Michael. Now, how can he not do that? He already rented the place, but it's a nice thing to do.
Sure.
And Jordan said how nervous he was because he had little kids in front of him, and they heard all the stories about Michael Jordan. And the guy said, "Can you take a free throw shot?" And he got really shaken up by it. But he did make the shot. He did make the two-pointer.
I heard that.
That's a lot of pressure.
I want to believe that. That just seems like a little bit too perfect of a story.
Well, it was a good one. Yeah. So what I'm watching this week is, and what I'm hearing about this week, and frankly, I'm meeting people that have been furloughed from the government shutdown. I literally have people reaching out to me from both the Trump administration and Capitol Hill, or non-essential employees, saying, whenever something stops in Washington and people aren't working, they start introspecting in their careers and figuring out what they should be doing with themselves. But it's interesting because if members of Congress get paid while the staff doesn't get paid.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of pressure on people because of that. So I feel bad for the federal workforce right now, in a way. I do think as the pressure rises, the pain starts. So right now, the staffs of members of Congress are starting to feel the pain if they're, if they're not going to be getting paid.
It's an interesting point. The staff is not getting paid, but the members
are.
Right.
Yes. We literally heard a story at lunch today where a junior staffer asked a senator in front of a staff meeting, "Are you getting paid, sir? Because we're not." And yeah, that's something, right? But that concentric circle goes out to healthcare open enrollments for health insurance starts November 1st. The SNAP benefits, those checks, but which is critical for a lot of families. But what will affect politicians when they're really going to feel the pain is Thanksgiving weekend. Is if the family is on the tarmac in a plane waiting for hours because an air traffic control tower is down people, and they just have one guy managing it all, or grandma is waiting for the family to come so she can visit with them over Thanksgiving, and maybe the flight gets canceled. Boy, they better figure that out. That's the way the last shutdown got solved. Is because
you said that here just 3 weeks ago, that you said it was going to go until Thanksgiving, and I thought for sure that we would, but it really feels like that's become more and more the deadline.
I mean, literally, Trump is taking a wrecking ball to Washington right now with a shutdown, but to the east wing of the White House, literally just smashing it. And we're all kind of watching it going, wow. Some people, we all silo ourselves. Some people say, well, it's okay to shake it up. Other people are saying, no, that's wrong. We shouldn't be doing that. But in the meantime, in the background, is this lurking deadline that I just can't see Americans standing for it.
So you think it's a good point. It's a good point to make. I want to get to a piece of data. Like we had a chance to visit with the digital team here at ROKK, because ordinarily when Washington goes out on recess, clients tend to either hold their budgets and wait until Congress gets back to engage in advertising and to engage in digital communications. But this shutdown actually has shown a little bit of a different trend. In fact, it turns out with some of our clients, we've actually seen an uptick in folks that are paying attention. They're on their phones. They're reading what's going on. In fact, now they're saying that it's an even better time to be sponsoring newsletters, which really is not the kind of counsel that firms like ROKK would give to clients, but that because people are glued to their phones, they're glued to their inboxes, they're paying attention. A lot of folks are on LinkedIn. We obviously know that because that's how we demonstrate what we do in the PR space. We demonstrate what we're working on. But other people who are looking for work or perhaps furloughed are paying close attention. So platforms like that are actually seeing a lot more traction. It's different now because there is this sort of void in the communication space where ordinarily we'd be not investing. Folks are investing more and more. We saw a 500% click rate up on one of the newsletters that we invested in this week because of the fact that folks are paying attention to what's happening. So there's a lot of streaming, YouTube. People are really paying attention to those platforms when ordinarily it would be more of a quiet time. This extended shutdown of the government has really changed the way people are investing in Washington, where ordinarily they would not. So.
Well, if you think about it, the fundraisers aren't happening. The meetings with staff, congressional members and staff, most of those meetings aren't happening because why would a company want to walk in the door and meet with a member of Congress and staff that's not being paid? That's maybe they're not essential. Like it's very hard stuff.
How do you think? Last question, really, before we close for today's conversation. I'm curious because there is so much happening all at once. We've got stuff going on with the NBA. We've got the healthcare issues that are going on. We've got the White House being literally torn down. Everything that's happening on Capitol Hill still is shut down. But nothing really feels like it's sticking. Is that going to change, do you think?
Listen, I think that what often happens, especially with the president on the presidential side, is there will be one moment, and it's usually not a good moment. And then everything else starts to kind of cascade from there.
Interesting.
And the things that didn't matter as much, like, oh, this is just like, oh, look at this news, what have you, this is amusing, or so on or so forth, they become more and more important. And we just haven't gotten to that point yet. There's this whole saying that you usually get fired for the same reason that you get hired, which is that like eventually people are just like tired of what it is that you're bringing. Well, we're not at that point with this administration. I know there are a lot of people that like, especially on the Democratic side, that are like hoping that we get to that point soon. But the fact is that we're not, right? And until we get to that point, all the other things that we think are so important here in Washington, D.C., they're not penetrating. But it takes that one thing, and I think it's going to likely be economic-based, where if there is some sort of economic downturn, then all these other things that seem amusing aren't as amusing.
The mainstream media used to dictate the winners and losers of a shutdown and really sway the politicians one way or the other. The mainstream media is kind of a shell of itself now because of the massive amount of publications out there that people are paying attention to, and siloing their news cycle, choose your own adventure about what you want to pay and listen to. Yeah. It's no longer, NBC Nightly News and the Washington Post and a whole host of those organizations saying the Democrats are winning or the Republicans are winning, and that's why we're in this mode here. So it takes a moment like that to really kind of break through, to convince one side or the other, or maybe both. Because at the end of the day, no one really wins in a shutdown.
That's right. And it's probably going to be an economic, the final crack in the armor, the final chink. That makes a ton of sense. Yeah. So if it's happening in this town, it's going to happen on the ROKK Rundown. So thanks for joining me today.
So awesome. I love that line. Great work. Thanks, America.